USC recruiting right now, like the Red Hot Chili Peppers said, can't stop.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. LSU, yeah, they got better in the transfer portal. Syracuse makes a bold move at receiver. That's all on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So, Brian Smith of the Portal Podcast is here, longtime recruiting analyst. And Brian, USC's on a heater. That feels like I'm underselling it, but it feels like a daily occurrence. Like the timing of it has been as impressive as the players they've been bringing in and the volume of players they've been bringing in. They have the number one class in the 2026 cycle right now. They've had that title for quite some time. They show no signs of slowing down because it feels like they roll out a new commit every 36 hours. How impressed are you with what USC is doing right now?
I think it's fantastic. It's good for college football that a team in Los Angeles matters. No offense to UCLA, but they're not that team right now. And USC wasn't either.
I mean, UCLA matters for a different reason.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna...
We're all interested in UCLA. I'm just saying. I'm going to be watching. I'm just saying.
I like Nico, but that is an interesting point as a side note. But more importantly, right now, USC needs linemen. They're getting those. We're going to talk about one of them. They just got a big-bodied receiver that I really like. They got Albert Hill from Ohio. I mean, they're getting kids from everywhere. But most importantly, Spencer, they're keeping some of the kids that have the California ties home, which you and I joked about for a while. It's like, why is this happening? And they finally turned it around. If they hadn't, you wouldn't text me and say, hey, come on the show and talk about USC. It's really that simple. So it's rather impressive what they've got going on in LA.
Yeah, that's where it has all really started for them. And look, it's early in the cycle to be sure, but they have so many more commits than everybody else right now. Their current class, Brian, I wonder if you disagree with this take. Their current class of 27 players is larger than other schools' classes will be who will finish in the top 10. I mean, that's how big it is. And it's still early May. Like, on the one hand, you can say, well, a lot can change. Kids could flip. Other schools will get commits. Like, yeah. And on the other hand, it's still early May. Like, this feels like a class to me that could push for at least 35 kids in that sort of range, which is insane.
I was told 35 is the number if everything went just right. They're going to be pretty picky from this point forward, as they say, go big game hunting. Maybe a D lineman or two more, maybe a defensive back, whatever, but it's offensive line. That's the biggest need remaining. Obviously, one of them you and I are going to discuss here in a second, but overall, that's the spot where they need to take another step up. If they're going to compete for titles, play against Texas, play against Georgia, play against Ohio State, etc., offensive line.
I don't think this has been an accident with their decline over the last 2 years. Lincoln Riley came in, brought in a big portal class, and they recruited fine. Not great, not terrible. They recruited fine, top 20-ish level for the last couple of cycles. And as it trended down, it felt to me, Brian, like Lincoln Riley realized, okay, that 1 year flash in the pan with Caleb Williams, 11-1, and then they lost their last two. Like, that was a great year and all, but if I'm going to build something going forward as my contract continues to play out, because USC is not in any hurry to try to figure out a way to pay his buyout because it's a whole heck of a lot of money. I think there have been a lot of conversations between him and the administration that just resulted in Lincoln Riley realizing, yeah, I need to go out on the trail and I need to get a bunch of big-time players so that I can build this for several years.
I was told that their NIL is now on the same page administratively with the football office, etc. It wasn't until recently, which is bizarre because for those that don't know, they got a lot of money there. It's a private school. You got the movie stars that, follow it. It's a show who's on the sidelines at USC games, has been for decades. So I was always puzzled by that, but I was told it wasn't in the same stratosphere with some other, Oregon, among others. And that's why they lost so many LA kids go to Michigan or go to Oregon or go to Texas or Texas A&M, whatever. Now they're starting to gain some of those back. And USC could be very dangerous. Now, it's not going to be an overnight haul here because even though you're bringing in a big class, freshmen don't win you games. But they've done a pretty good job in the portal, too. Now they're supplementing at a better balance. And as you noted, it's about the long term. You got to recruit the high school kids if you're going to do that. Look at the teams that advanced in the playoffs, all except for like Arizona State is pretty much a homegrown team. Arizona, so what they did last year at Arizona State is wild, but that's not the norm. If you're going to win consistently, you got to get linemen, especially from high school ranks, but you need balance too. And SC's class, it's going to help them do that.
Yeah, and let's talk about a couple of the guys they've picked up just within the last week or so. Kini Pepe, 5-star offensive tackle, according to 24/7, committed within the last week. They picked up Albert Hill as well, high-end defensive back prospect. Talk about those two guys, and then we'll wrap with the receiver you mentioned too.
Pepe is a kid that I know well, plays at IMG, 6'7", 6'8", 330, 335. Flat out one of the best pass protectors in the class. He will play in the NFL. Now, Albert Hill is interesting because he's a corner, but he's put together like a boxer. He is put together. He is shredded, and he's that guy that'll hit you. I'm curious if he will end up playing nickel, corner, multiple roles, but I think USC is starting to get more physical, and this is the kind of player you want. Not the tallest guy, but he's just a good football player. Luke Weaver's a big receiver, plays at Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks. That program's always had kids, and he's 6'3", 205, 210. Finding big-bodied boundary receivers is not easy, especially in today's age when everybody knows that. So keeping him home, that's a big deal for USC. They've had some luck with some big receivers here lately. They're trying to get back into that.
I feel like the floor for USC, and I mean like the basement floor, given where they're at right now, because it's May, I'll conservatively say a top 10 class, but it feels like for, the length of time they've had the number one class, the volume of players, and I think there was a bit of a stretch where they weren't getting the highest rated guys, but they were still bringing in interesting prospects, up and down this class and from a variety of positions. But now they're starting to land some of the big guys. Like Pepe is their second highest rated recruit, according to 24/7. So do you feel like the baseline expectation with what they've done here in this spring recruiting window is a top 5 class for the 2026 cycle?
I would say top 3, just because of the volume. And they're actually meeting needs, too. It's not just like one spot. There for a while, I'm like, okay, where are the offensive players? Because they signed so many defensive linemen to get commitments. But now they're flipping it to the other side, and they're getting a nice balance. There's nothing to nitpick at anymore. They've got a quarterback that's really good, and Jonas Williams, et cetera. That everything's good. So if they finish outside the top 3, I'd be quite surprised.
Yeah, and I think that's a welcome sight for USC fans who have kind of been waiting to see this kind of resurgence. And the potential was always there. To your point, Brian, this isn't random. This is – I actually want your thoughts on Chad Bowden, the general manager who came over from Notre Dame. I can't sit here from the outside and say definitively it's been all him. It's hard to imagine given the timing of his arrival and what has now happened for the Trojans. Like they've wound the clock back 20 years in a good way on the trail. Seems like he's one of the more highly influential general managers in all of college football.
That's true. He's very aggressive. He gets a little more leeway on offering kids and going after kids than some other guys do. And I think that's why he went to SC. He didn't have quite as much at Notre Dame. But I don't think you can really argue with the result. I mean, what is 27, 28, whatever the number is. It's
27.
It's pushing 30 or whatever. It's a lot. And again, like you said, we're not even in the middle of May. So now the question is, can they balance that again in the portal class in December? Because if they do that, all of a sudden you're into a situation, okay, they can compete for the playoff again. I don't think they're a playoff team this year. I know some SC fans don't want to hear that, but next year I could definitely see it.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, freshmen are not winning playoff games. You got to let them get on campus, develop, filter out, who's good, who's not, who's hitting the portal, who's sticking around. And look, even if only 60% of this class, and I'm just, making a point here, even if only 60% of this class sticks around for multiple years at USC, Brian, you're still talking about over 20 kids that's going to make up the bulk of USC's roster in 2027, I would say, the contributing roster, I think, for 26 and 27. So it's certainly an exciting time if you're a USC fan, because it does feel like the days of old. Brian Smith, the Portal Podcast, check him out. We're going to the SEC next. Speaking of high-profile head coaches who need to make defensive adjustments, Brian Kelly just got better on defense at LSU. First, this episode brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Fast and easy hiring, that's what you're looking for, right? That's what Upwork gives you. Posting a job is free and simple. And within a day, with multiple qualified candidates to choose from, you're going to be set up for success. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today with Upwork.com. I love this move for LSU. Matt Moscona of Locked On LSU is here to talk about AJ Haulcy coming over from Houston, who at the time of his departure from the portal, Matt, top player available per 24/7. Now, plenty of guys had left previously, but when you look at the lineup of defensive backs that have moved in the transfer portal this spring cycle, I'd have a hard time putting him outside the top 5.
And if you include adding DJ Pickett, who is the number 1 cornerback in the country that they added in the freshman class. Yeah, I mean, Spencer, LSU defensively was bad. Safety play was by far the biggest liability on the team. I don't know if you look at Pro Football Focus. I always say to my audience, it's a metric. It's not the metric. It's just something to consider. But the highest graded safety was Sage Ryan at a 69. The lowest was one of the starters they had who was graded out about like a 50. They were terrible. They were just terrible at safety. They had to improve. They added Tamarcus Cooley from NC State in the first portal window, and now they've added AJ Haulcy, 2 all-conference caliber players from their previous stops, and you've just dramatically improved what was the worst position on your defense.
Yeah, and when I look at PFF, Matt, and for those who don't know, 70 is a good player. 80 is a great player. If you have a grade of 90, which is easier to get at quarterback, if you have a grade of 90 at any spot, you are about to get drafted in the first round in all likelihood. So for LSU to not have had anyone at safety that PFF said this is a good player, like slightly above average but not all conference caliber, it makes a lot of sense why they'd go out and add these sorts of guys.
And by the way, the highest graded safety was Sage Ryan, who now plays for Ole Miss. Ole Miss people might kind of tout that. LSU fans were kind of glad to see him go. I'm not trying to slight Sage. I think he played hard throughout his time. He showed up as a 5-star, and it just never really materialized here. Maybe change of scenery will be good for him, but it does illustrate just how bad they were at that position a year ago.
Yeah, I like Haulcy. Had a really good season at Houston this past year, and we'll get to him more in just a moment. But a big picture, Matt, something that I always appreciate that sounds really simple, but it just isn't as obvious to everyone as it should be in college football. When you've got a weakness, clear and identifiable, go out and attack it in the offseason as hard as you possibly can. Not everywhere does this. And the best example is USC. Ironic we're talking about LSU because those two programs have a lot in common in the last couple of years with their coaching profile, and they played each other last year, of course. But USC came in year 1 under Lincoln Riley and bursts on the scene with Caleb Williams. He wins the Heisman. They go 11-1, but their defense lets them down. They collapse against Tulane. And then the next year, they just kind of stood around. They sat on their hands, status quo. Let's just and everyone was looking around going, wait a minute. San Jose State came into the Coliseum and was moving the football. You got to go out and do something here. And that's what I appreciate about what Brian Kelly's done in the last couple cycles is, you know what? I need a new defensive quarter. He goes and gets Blake Baker from Missouri. You know what? It was better, but we still need to improve. Let's go out and attack and find guys that can help us right here, right now. Let's attack it in the recruiting cycle. I just appreciate places, no matter the level, whether it's FCS or the SEC, I think that's a really great way to go about it, because you don't always, sometimes coaches can get stuck in their ways, I think, and say, oh, no, we're good with the guys we got. Like, that's not the way Brian Kelly's approaching this.
Well, I think it's also been an evolution since he's been in Baton Rouge. His first year, remember, he kind of inherited a mess where they were really low on numbers. They took 15 transfers. And then the second year, they took 13. And last year, they took 9. And Spencer, they were 9 that were not impactful. And you went 8-4. And I think as a result of that, they realized, oh no, not only do we have to go heavier in the portal, but impactful portal additions. And so they've added 18 transfer portal additions between the December and spring periods here. So I think you're right in saying that Kelly has evolved, but it takes some degree of being able to put your pride aside, some self-awareness to realize maybe the way you were going about it wasn't the right way. I mean, I think we're all learning, right? I mean, we're learning in this NIL portal 12-team college football playoff era what it takes to win, and Ohio State just showed you. Go ham in the portal, build the best roster possible, and play your best football in December, January, and try to win a championship.
Yeah, let's talk about Haulcy now. What do you like about him at that safety spot?
As a 3-year starter, he's got over 200 tackles, man. It's closer to 250 tackles in 3 years. For context, Jordan Gilbert, who's LSU's most experienced safety returning, has played the same number of games as Haulcy with about half as many tackles. He also led the Big 12 in interceptions last year. So you're talking about a guy that can play free or strong, so he can be flexible within the defense wherever you need him. But like, dude, I love the attitude, man. His Twitter handle is Mr. Gimme That. Like, that's his nickname. I mean, I kind of like, if you want a DB, you got to be cocky and you got to have a short memory, and he seems to have it. I've never met him, haven't talked to him. I mean, he was just on campus this past Sunday for his visit and committed on his visit. But man, if you need someone who can cover, he can do it. You need someone who can tackle, he can do it. You need someone with attitude, he's got it. I mean, it's an immediate improvement from literally anything you got.
Yeah, seems like he's 100% locked into a starting spot, not just a heavy rotation role.
Yeah, I think both safeties. Throw Tamarcus Cooley in there, who came in from NC State, and he was an all-conference caliber player at NC State this past year. Started his career went Maryland, NC State, now LSU. But both of those guys are. There's some, Spencer, I've heard this from some LSU fans, because LSU has recruited well at that position. For example, Deshaun Spears is a rising sophomore who was a 5-star by some services, and he played a lot at the beginning, the first month of his freshman year, and that his snap count really decreased in the second half of the season. And maybe he has a big explosive sophomore year. But I think the key is for Brian Kelly, he didn't need to take the risk that a player like that doesn't take the big step, because you can go in the portal and add a guy. And look, if Deshaun Spears steps up and has a monster sophomore year, awesome, great. But if not, I mean, you've got 2 proven starters that are ready made. And I think snap 1, game 1 against Clemson, that Haulcy and Cooley are both going to be starting at safety for LSU.
I covered DJ Pickett's recruitment a lot coming out of high school. Is he someone who you think steps in and starts right away? Defensive back, amongst all the positions, not the hardest. I don't know about the easiest necessarily, but nothing's ever easy. It's not the hardest spot or the least improbable spot to have a true freshman come in and play right away. Do you think that's a core 3 guys right there of LSU secondary?
So I think Pickett he'll play. He might even be on the field at some point during the first defensive series of the year. But they added Mansour Delane from Virginia Tech. And by the way, Pickett was here for bowl practices as well. So he went through the bowl practices before the game against Baylor, and he went through spring. So by the time they actually play a game, he's going to have been here darn near a year. And he looks the part, man. You can see why a guy like that's a 5-star. I mean, he's 6'4", he's a freaking pterodactyl. He's awesome. But they got Mansour Delane from Virginia Tech, and Mansour Delane is by a mile the best cornerback they have right now. I mean, you don't have to be a scout. You can go watch practice and go, oh, 4 looks different. He's pretty good, right, at this thing. So he'll start. I think Ashton Stamps, who's a 3-year, who will be going into his junior year as a 3-year starter, will be the other starting cornerback when they start the season. That could evolve as the season goes along, and I fully expect Pickett's going to play a massive role in the secondary, probably not from jump.
At least one of LSU or Bama, I think, gets back to the playoff this year. I think if it's just one, it's the team that shores up the back end of their defense better, because both last year just were not good enough. Alabama's defense was not good enough. I think they will be better. LSU certainly thinks that as well. Matt Moscona, Locked On LSU, great as always. We're going up to the Northeast next because, well, Syracuse made one of the decisions of all time in college football. First, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. So if you're watching these NBA playoffs, which have been pretty crazy, quite wild, lots of fun, and you think you know what's going to happen, well, guess what? FanDuel allows you to put your money where your mouth is. How could a $200 bonus bet situation benefit you? Well, guess what? You can get that if your first $5 bet hits. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Pretty good. It's a pretty good deal. Pretty darn good. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him. Jackson Holzer of Locked On Syracuse is here because the Orange, Jackson, have gone out and added Johntay Cook, a former 5-star wide receiver who was at Texas and then was at Washington, did not take a snap, not even in the spring game for the Huskies because of off-the-field matters. And following the departure of Trevor Pena to Penn State, this appears to be the backfilling option. So let's start with the non-football stuff, and we'll get to the on-the-field impact here. Were you surprised that someone with a bit of a checkered past was brought into Syracuse?
I was at first, and then the more I thought about it, not really. Because I feel like if anyone is going to be someone that can lead an attitude adjustment, I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it, but I think you kind of understand what I'm saying here. You know, get your head back in the right headspace. You know, focus on football, no nonsense. It's Fran Brown. You got to figure that he is maybe the coach that could unlock Johntay Cook's potential. So I understand he's got the off-field concerns. I wouldn't say any of his arrests or anything like that are unforgivable, if that makes you feel any better. I mean, I'm not trying to minimize his crimes. What I'm trying to tell you is he didn't kill anyone. Like, it's not an unforgivable mistake or mistakes that he has made. I think he deserves another chance, and we'll just see what happens. And if Fran Brown can't correct his behavior, I don't know if anyone can.
I think the other angle that you look at this, if you're a coaching staff, is, okay, we're clearly bringing in, you know, a guy that has not been able to find his way. But what are we here to do as coaches? We're not just football coaches for the guys on the field, but you hear a lot of coaches talk, and you know what? For some of them, it's just coach speak and just pandering to donors and parents and all that sort of stuff. But you have a lot of guys out there, a lot, and I would say most, quite frankly, who genuinely look at the opportunity to be a football coach and say, I want to take these young guys and make them better versions of themselves, the best versions of themselves, and prepare them to go out and have a successful life, whether that involves football or not. I think that's the other angle of it. I think you would really have to internally believe that sort of stuff if you are Fran Brown, because, you know, Syracuse has some other talented players on the roster. There was certainly a bit of a need when Trevor Pena left, but I think that you have to be really confident that you can foster that sort of relationship to where it doesn't disrupt your locker room, doesn't disrupt your team, the position group, or anything like that, if you're willing to go out and bring them in, which obviously Syracuse did.
I think Nick Saban in a press conference was once, there's a famous quote or a clip of him talking about a receiver for the Carolina Panthers. I think it's Muhsin Muhammad, and how he screwed up when he was in college, and he got disciplined because, discipline has to be a factor here. You have to, you make a mistake. I mean, you deserve discipline for it, right? Even on the field, you jump off sides, you deserve a 5-yard penalty. So, but in Nick Saban's talk or in his rant, he was saying, hey, wasn't going to kick him off the team. He had to learn from his mistake, and he ended up being right in the end because Musa Muhammad plays over a decade in the NFL and has a daughter that goes to Princeton. So I'm not going to sit here and try to be the judge of someone's character that A, I haven't met, and B, if Fran Brown's saying, hey, look, I believe I can turn him around, he's worth the risk. All right. I'm open. I'm open to it because he's an electrifying talent as well. We can't ignore that. I understand that he hasn't necessarily carved out a role yet in college football, but this guy's got 4.3 speed. He was a 5-star recruit in high school in 2023. We can't ignore the elephant in the room here because that also goes with second chances is how good are you? Mm-hmm. Are you a good player? Well, you'll get more chances. If you're not a good player, you might want to do something else. You get less chances, right? That's just how the world works sometimes. And with Johntay Cook, you can see the upside. You can see that he's got talent. You might as well take the risk here.
Yeah, the talent is pretty undeniable. He didn't crack the receiver rotation consistently at Texas. I am not privy to how the inner workings of the locker room were and whether it was a perfect fit across the board, but he was a big-time recruit coming out of high school, and it was a great get for Texas at the time because, man, this guy could be another one of those, more than gadget players in Steve Sarkisian's offense. Like a couple of years ago, what was it, this past season maybe? They had Silas Bolden from Oregon State. Yeah, they had this past year. Worthy. Yeah, Xavier Worthy. Yep. Those guys came in there and had all this production. It wasn't hard to see at the time how you could see Johntay Cook becoming the next great one. So for Syracuse, Jackson, do you expect him to come in and just take Trevor Pena's role and be one of the top 2 or 3 receivers on the Syracuse offense?
I think based on talent, yeah, because he's the most pure talent. That's the key here. Pure talent. He's the best receiver on the team. I don't even think it's close. There's not a single receiver on the team that's not his pedigree. Not even close. I mean, Emmanuel Ross was a 4-star wide receiver. Darrell Gill had a nice year last year where he actually led the ACC in yards per catch. So he's another guy who can stretch the field. Johntay Cook's a 5-star guy in 2023 who played at Texas. He's got to be one of the most talented players on Syracuse. Forget the wide receivers, on the team. But Brian Smith, I had him on Locked On Syracuse earlier last week, and he mentioned how it's hard to project where he's actually going to fit, at least early on in the season, because he got here in April. He didn't have any of those reps with Syracuse in the spring, so I wonder how he's going to look over the summer and if he can get up to speed quickly with the offense. And also keep in mind, Spencer, you're aware of this. Steve Angeli, their new quarterback, also got here in the spring. So it's going to be fascinating to see how the two can work together. Not only learn the offense, but build chemistry together as well. Oh, by the way, there's also a quarterback battle.
Yeah, the potential starting quarterback and potential leading receiver for the Orange came in after spring ball. That's a unique situation. I imagine those guys are getting together at the beach this summer and running some routes next to the ocean or something. Does it get warm enough? Well, yeah, it probably gets a little too warm at times.
It's hot in Syracuse in the summer.
Yeah.
It's hot. I've been there over the summer. My first year in college was in 2020, so it was COVID. And the reason why I'm telling you this story is because we got 1 hour of outside time a day when we had to quarantine. And it wasn't fun. Not only because it was only 1 hour a day, but also because it was like 90 degrees outside.
Oh.
Okay, it's hot in the summer. I understand it gets freezing over the winter, but it's pretty nice. It's hot in the summer. So you can find a field. You can throw some passes because you know what, Spencer? You know who you're playing week 1?
Tennessee.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, their starting quarterback also just got there too.
Yeah.
You know what's the greatest thing about Fran Brown? is that we're talking about Syracuse right now.
Yeah.
We don't ever before Fran Brown, would you really talk about Syracuse in May?
No, it never popped up on the show.
Nope. And guess what? If I was the host of Locked On Syracuse at the time, I don't know how much football I'd be talking about in May. But this is Fran Brown. I mean, he makes a move, and you're just like, this man did it again. Like, he's just going to make us talk about this. Holy, he knows what he's doing.
There's some to it, though. You know, he's not doing it the Deion Sanders way, but there's a Deion Sanders factor here.
It's a little more quiet than Deion Sanders.
Yeah,
and the only reason it's more quiet is because he's not the name brand of Deion Sanders.
Right. And I mean, he's somebody who seems very knowledgeable about what he wants to be, what he wants to establish, what he can accomplish as a head coach. And by the way, Syracuse just went 10-3 and knocked Miami out of the playoff. Are they that good this year? I don't think so. But is Fran Brown moving them in the right direction? It's kind of hard to argue otherwise. I'm more than a little interested to see how this all plays out. And the fun carousel of conversation of Steve Angeli leaves Notre Dame, he could go to Tennessee. He goes to Syracuse, Nico, UCLA. It's all just revolving around.
We're always there. It's just always there. And that's something, that's probably the best thing so far that Fran Brown has done, to be honest with you. Forget the wins and losses. Hopefully he does even better than 10-3 going forward, because, that'd probably mean college football playoff and all that and ACC titles, but he just always has us in the conversation. We're talking about football here. In May, we're talking about Syracuse. They're more interesting than most teams in college football. I didn't say better. I said more interesting than most teams in college football. Yeah. You got a quarterback battle between a guy from LSU who couldn't see the field and a guy from Notre Dame who couldn't really get on the field. But when he got on the field, he was good. One guy got here in December. The other guy got here in April. We have no idea who's going to start. One of them's hurt, so that might be a factor. You're bringing in this really talented wide receiver in April while you're having this quarterback competition going on. Oh, by the way, this 5-star wide receiver has a checkered past.
Syracuse. Syracuse is fun. That's the only way to say it.
I'm having a blast here.
Syracuse is just fun. Jackson Holzer, Locked On Syracuse. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.